The Sacred Math 1, Chapter 10. New Living Arrangements. The slaves had tried to capture the dragon in order to produce powerful halflings, and before anything bad occurred, the Arch Magus Helmer had interfered on behalf of Gregory, and with his magic he had broken the chains that imprisoned the youth who was in his dragon form. And the guards had tried to pellet Helmer with arrows, but a strange knight in a black armor appeared before Helmer. And then I repelled the arrows with his straight sword, and Helmer began to sing, and his magic lullaby lulled the guards to sleep. And Gregory too fell asleep, and when he awoke, he was back in the guild being interrogated by Eric and Allan. The spirits had been awful frightening, so Natalie Greg didn't know what to talk about it, but the two were very persistent. The two came to look for Gregory, and they found the two came back to look for Gregory, but they found that his clothing was gone, and a lot of his studio items were also missing. And they looked outside the window to see Sofina making her way out of the guild, and both started accosting Sofina with their inquiries, and Sofina pretended not to hear them as she continued on her way. Caron got Greg out of the tub, and he dressed him in one of his nightgowns, and it was a decent enough fit, except for the length of the sleeves. Greg was taller than Caron, and he only appeared smaller because of how he was shrinking into himself. Caron sat Greg on a nearby chair while he fixed the bed, and he said, "You can sleep here for tonight, and my bed is pretty big so you can relax, and I will see about fixing the nearby empty room tomorrow." "I don't think you should," said Greg, "and it's only a matter of time before Bron and Alyssa have another child, and it wouldn't be right for me to take the nursery room for myself." Caron grew somber at the mention of another baby, and changing the subject he said, "Well, there is a guest room downstairs, and you can sleep down there if you like." "I am pretty comfortable here, and you don't snore, do you?" asked Greg. "Not that I'm aware of," said Caron. "I barely even sleep, so snoring won't be a problem that turns up. Oh, that's right, the milk." Caron put Greg to bed, and then he went to fetch the milk, and the milk was found in a small stable in the garden, and there rested the goat which provided fresh milk. The little goat knew how to work the logs, so sometimes it was found roaming the gardens eating the flower. Caron found the little goat Lucia roaming about, and he brought Lucia back into the stables. And then he got Greg a glass of milk, and remembering the cold thing, Caron went to the basement to put the milk inside the refrigerator for a bit. As he was coming out of the basement, he saw Bron with his cash. Alyssa had a craving for salmon, so Bron went fishing for it, and with his wife talking about cravings, Bron imagined that Alyssa might be with child. "Hey brother, still up and about I see," said Bron, smiling warmly. "It is not that late, it is only 9, commented Caron. Bron opened the freezer, which was as big as a room, with the meat and all of the items that require refrigeration, and he put his cash away, and then he noticed the glass of milk. Bron went to take it, but Caron protested. "It is for someone else." "Then go get another, I'm thirsty," said Bron, insisting. "Greg is not feeling well, and I think this milk cannot wait," said Caron, closing the freezer door. "So that is who's staying here," commented Bron. And he added, "If it's not well, then call Eric." "Eric is the reason why Greg is not doing well," protested Caron. Bron saw a look in his brother that he had not seen in years, and he decided not to press him. Still, he was not comfortable with Greg's presence there, and Caron had recently told Bron of Grimory's true identity, and Greg's two-faced nature did not sit bright with Bron. Caron stood there for a bit waiting for the milk to get cold, and then he took it off back upstairs, and when he entered the room he saw that the lights were off, and the curtains were drawn, and Caron went to speak with Greg in the darkness. No, Caron heard Greg speak in the darkness. "Regis came to check up on me, and I asked him to turn off the lights and close the curtain." "Sorry, but I can't see anything," said Caron, "and can I turn on the lights a bit? I'm going to put them in the lowest dimming setting." Caron turned on the gas lights, and he saw that Greg was sitting up with his back propped up on pillows, and he saw a large bag with many different items, and Greg had in his hand the little rag doll Priscilla. And Greg explained, "Sofina came in just to leave some stuff, and she's now in the guild taking care of Eric. And Allan was easy, and he came here and apologized for being a fool." Allan, he usually goes along with what Eric wants, but Eric, You don't need to explain yourself, Greg, said Caron, sitting by him, and he offered him the glass of milk, which Greg drank with gusto, and Greg sighing, and a white steam escaped his lips. Greg turned to look at Caron's reaction, which remained unchanged, and smiling, he said, Sophina brought an ointment for my head once, and I think it's in the front pocket. Caron looked through the bag, and then he found the small ointment job, and he rubbed it a bit on top of Greg's head, where he felt the scabs. And when he pulled his hands back, he had a few scales stuck to his hand, and Greg frowned when he saw the scales, and Caron's expression did not change at all, and he simply got up and he went to wash his hands. Greg added, while your dear get me some water and something to spit to, I'm going to wash my mouth. Caron did as Greg asked, and with the final libations completed, Caron asked, Is there anything else you need, Mr. Needy? I need you to stop teasing me, said Greg frowning. Is there anything you need, Gregory? And you're always complaining that nobody takes your concerns into consideration, so tell me, what do you need to feel better? Asked Caron. Greg turned his head, worried about asking what he truly wanted, and he turned to look at Caron. I heard that you left Alisa because she pitied you. And if this is a pity situation, I can leave when I feel a little better. I don't want your pity. I got enough pity from Allan and Eric. And you say you love Grimory, but poor Greg is just Greg. And when I feel better, I could pretend to be Grimory just for you. And then maybe poor Greg will be tolerable. Caron drew near Greg and he kissed him, and looking straight at him, he said, I have made my decision, and I'd rather have an imperfect someone made of flesh and blood than a chimera made of ink and paper. Even if I grow horns, asked Greg. If you grow horns, then I will call you my dear, dear Greg, said Caron, wrapping his arms around Greg. And if my skin becomes scaly and snake-like, asked Greg. I like the feel of fishes, retorted Caron. Greg smiled and said, That is sweet of you to say, but only time will tell. Eric was like that too, strong in his convictions to be my benefactor, but then he saw my true form. And you see, Inanis, she not only protects me, but hides my true form in battle. And she takes credit for the things I can do naturally. That is not to say that she is weak, far from it, but her powers are not limitless. And Wardenas's ogre champion nearly broke us, and even with all the preparations we underwent before the duel. And later I went to the river to drink water, and my flesh felt hot, and I removed the armor to bathe in the river. And then I went to see how I was doing, and he was terrified by my metamorphosis. And he still fears me, Caron. All right then, Greg, I won't make any promises that you know that I might not be able to keep, said Caron. And for now, let's just take things one day at a time. After saying this, Caron kissed Greg again, and Greg moved a couple of pillows about, and he lay down to further prepare to sleep. And Caron left to take his bath, and he got changed, and he brushed his teeth. And when he came back to check up on Greg, Greg's eyes were starting to close a bit, almost as if he was struggling to stay awake. Greg said, Sweet Caron, you have been so nice to me. I can't do much for you in my current state, but if it pleases you, you can feast on my unworthy flesh. Greg made a motion to loosen his nightgown, but Caron stopped him, and smiling he said, I wasn't being nice to you just to take advantage of you, and what was this flesh thing? And I can see why you chose the name Grimory, and you need to lighten up a little. Yeesh, let's go to sleep. Caron turned off the light, and he opened the windows to let the cool ocean breeze in, and Greg turned his back to Caron, and he closed his eyes, and Caron went to lie down beside Greg, and he pushed himself to the edge of the bed as much as possible. And Greg's breathing became relaxed, and he was soon fast asleep. And Caron watched Greg sleep peacefully for a bit, and he stretched his arms to look into Greg's dreams. And remembering what Eric had done made Caron stop, and he closed his eyes to sleep and to deal with his own demons by himself. Caron awoke the next morning fully rested, and he looked to his side, and he saw that Greg was still sleeping while hugging the ragdoll Priscilla. And Caron went downstairs to start breakfast, and Lysandra was still sleeping, so Caron took it upon himself to start the day. And Sophina arrived while Caron was making breakfast, and she was soon trailed by Allan and Eric. I wasn't expecting this many guests, said Caron. If you wait a while, I can feed you as well. What will you be having? Eggs, bacon, sausage, said Allan. And I could also go for some fresh bread and butter. The doll is already rising, Allan, said Caron, who was frying 2 eggs and a sausage. I don't doubt it, said Allan, laughing when he saw what Caron was frying up. How is Gregory? Asked Eric. And did he have any fits? No, he was well behaved, so if he's having fits with you, then there must be something you are doing wrong, said Caron flatly. To be fair, he had a fit on your account, said Allan. You live and you learn, Allan, said Caron, and if something no longer works for you, then it is time for a change, don't you think so too, Allan? Caron made good on his effort to restore Gregory's health, and after 2 weeks, Greg was strong enough to walk about, and he still got tired if he roamed too much. And he was also not a fan of the stair situation in the manor, and the little pouches he got from the guild members contained gold coins, and some had precious stones. During those 2 weeks, Eric would visit Greg on a daily to entice him to return to the Sacred Mass Guild. And when Eric had the intention of visiting, Sophina would sense it, and she made it her business to chaperone all of Eric's interactions with Gregory. And Allan too visited Greg, but for the purposes of continuing Caron's training. And Gregory could not participate yet, but he gave pointers every so often, and when Julian did not have school, Allan would take him to visit his father. Julian and Greg would sit on the floor to play little soldiers, or they would stack toys on top of each other. And as of lately, Julian was into playing with marbles, and on the second weekend of Julian's visit, Bron was going to the garden to observe Caron and Allan's training, and Lucifer was also there reading a book. And as Bron drew near, he accidentally stepped on Greg's tail, and Caron had made a modification to Greg's nightgown so that the tail could stick out unimpeded. And Greg naturally let out all the curse word combinations he knew, and Bron saw what he had done, and he said, "Sorry, but it's your fault for sitting on the floor." Greg said, "My heart, please don't tell your mother I cursed in front of you." "It's fine," said Julian. "I know all the curse words too. See, I will show you." "Really now, my heart," said Greg, laughing after he heard all of those curse words. "And pray tell me, where did you learn to speak like a little sailor?" "From school, duh," said Julian, giggling. Allan and Caron had started their exercise routine to see the commotion, and Caron regarded Bron with a cold look but did not remark on the matter. And it was Allan who asked, "And did someone step on your tail again, Greg?" "Yes, it was this big, hulking brute," cried Greg, pointing to Bron. "I did not do it on purpose. See, it doesn't even look bruised," said Bron, pointing to the tail. And indeed, the tail looked in one piece, and the situation was solved by Lucifer, and he said in a cool voice, "If the tail is fine, there's no need to press the matter further. And Allan, Caron, return to your training, and Bron's son, go see about Alisa. She said she had good news for you." Bron, remembering why he had been in a hurry, returned to go see about Alisa, and the good news was that she had secured a contract for a bard that she liked, and now the local theater would be getting some real talent. And this news not only disappointed Bron, for he was expecting to hear something else, and he also did not appreciate seeing his wife gushing about another man. A week passed after this incident, and Gregory was finally ambulatory, and whenever Caron was not around, he would revert to Mr. Needy. Whenever Caron was around, he would revert to Mr. Needy, and Caron realized that Gregory was malingering for attention, but he was enjoying taking care of Mr. Needy. And the only fellow that did have a problem with Gregory was Bron, and as soon as Caron left, Gregory would spring from bed and go about his routine. And Caron had recently sought employment at the guild, and he was familiar with trade codes and laws, so he served as a notary. It was boring, busy work, but it made him feel useful. Gregory was still not leaving the house, nor was he taking any painting commissions, and every time Caron tried to spend any money on Greg, Bron would put opposition, and Gregory too noticed Bron's animosity towards him, and he could sense a growing resentment between the brothers on account of him being there. And one day Caron left with Allan to tend to some problems down in the family mine, and the manager of Lord Siegfried's mine had become a slave driver, and he needed to be fired and replaced. The night before his departure, Greg was particularly whiny about it, and Caron felt sorry for Mr. Needy, but he needed to handle this financial problem. When Caron left in the morning, Greg got changed into street clothing, and he returned to the Sacred Masculine to speak with Eric. And while he was gone, Bron set about looking through Greg's personal possession. And Bron frowned when he saw Caron's bedroom with the notebooks and pencils and toys littered about. And Bron saw one of the mysterious pouches under the bed, and he took one and he emptied the contents on the table. And the powder was diamond dust, and combined with water, it helped relieve Greg's heartburns. Bron, who was the type of fellow to think the worst of anyone, assumed that it was a type of drug, and he returned to the spot and he found it, and he started to look through more stuff, but then Alisa opened the door to Caron's room, and frowning she said, "There you are." "Oh, hi, wife," said Bron, giving an innocent smile. "I swear, it is like we have a little kid living here, and let me help you tidy up this room before the children return," said Alisa. And together they organized things, and Alisa took the little bag from under the bed, and she returned it to the table with the others. And Bron asked Alisa, "You shook up on them every so often?" "Yes, I admit it. I am guilty of being a gossip," said Alisa, feigning regret, and she added, "So, do you want to know what's your favorite position?" "I don't want to hear your nonsense, Alisa," said Bron grouchy. "Oh, but it is simply great, simply amazing," said Alisa, laughing. "Wife," barked Bron. "It's called side by side," said Alisa jokingly. "Side by side," asked Bron. "I'm not familiar with this." "Here, let me show you how it's done," said Alisa, lying down in the bed. Bron was of the habit of indulging his wife's fancies, and he lay down beside her, and both were staring at the roof, and Bron asked Alisa, "So what now?" "Now what? We're doing side-by-side position already at this very moment," said Alisa, bursting out laughing. "Oh," said Bron, "I get it. Took you long enough, you silly goose," said Alisa, sitting up. "So they haven't done it yet, have they?" asked Bron, sighing with relief. "No, they haven't, more the pity. They do kiss often, and it's so sweet, the tenderness that they show one another, and you can learn a thing or two from your brother about being sweet," said Alisa. "I'm an ogre, and ogres are not sweet," barked Bron. "So say, it's the sweetie pie that made me this beautiful dress," said Alisa, showcasing her elegant pink floral summer dress. Alisa was not much for heavy clothing or corsages, and most of the fashion of the ladies of Wallen was considered slutty. And it also did not help that every so often Sofina challenged the norms of decency with a new dress design. Bron sighed, and then he went to distress by working at his loom, and Bron had made most of Caron's female wardrobe, and he had learned the craft from his dead mother, and whenever Bron worked at the loom, he felt his mother's presence nearby, and it gave him great comfort. And Bron sat at his loom, and he tried to stop thinking about the little bag he found under Caron's bed, and maybe it wasn't what he thought it was, and his meditations were interrupted when he heard a soft knocking at the door. Bron, smiling, said, "Come in." "Bron," said Greg softly. "Oh, it's you," said Bron, not turning around for his work. "Here," said Greg, putting a large bag of coins near Bron. "Where do you get the money from?" asked Bron. "From Eric," said Greg. He manages my finances because he says I cannot be trusted with money." Bron was quiet and thoughtful, and since Bron was not saying anything, Greg meekly departed. As soon as Greg left, Bron started mumbling under his breath, and the main thing that peeved him was that nightgown that Greg had been using, and Bron had made it specifically for his little brother, and Caron had gifted it to Greg, and he had even mutilated the outfit to make room for that disgusting tail. The following day, Caron and Allan had not returned from their trip, and the two had gotten sidetracked as they trailed behind Helmer. And once again, the Arch Magus had lowered his guard, and they had seen Helmer visiting a blacksmith to pick up a special order. And after mind-reading the blacksmith, Allan found out that Helmer had ordered surgical tools made specifically for his small hands. "And what do you make of this?" asked Allan. "Necromancy, obviously," said Caron flatly. "And that knight that assisted him was probably an animated corpse." "I don't know," said Allan. "I have seen necromancy constructs, and the one from Gregory's memory looked a little too spry. And courses are used for foot soldiers, but not much else, and they do not just appear. They usually need to be transported. A summoning spell, suggested Caron. Without a summoning circle, asked Allan. Warrior, that is the Arch Magus, and it would not be impossible for him to conjure out whatever he needed, said Caron. Magic has its limits, Caron, and if that could summon anything out of thin air, he would not be eating at a restaurant like a normal person, nor would he be bothering to visit a blacksmith to get something made for him, explained Allan. Holy fuck, said Caron, jumping out of his skin. A helmet's black knight had appeared behind Allan's head, and the helmet had an ant-like design with large round eyes on top of the head. The knight disappeared just as quickly as he had come, and Allan looked behind his head and he saw a couple of elementals, and the elementals normally had warp shapes and did not resemble normal living creatures. And Allan, laughing, said, if you're going to be a mage, you need to learn to be super chill with dealing with elementals. Sure, they look strange, but it's nothing to get jumpy about, and you feed them mana and they amplify your magic. It is a simple, symbiotic relationship, and we do not interfere with their life, and they do not bother ours. Still, there must be an exception to the rule, don't you think? Said Caron. I just saw that weird knight with a strange helmet, and maybe he's an elemental, and just because we think things are fact doesn't mean that they are truth. Think about it. Allan looked about, and aside from the usual elemental faces, he saw nothing, and smiling he said, Did you sleep last night? No, I haven't. No, I have a hard time sleeping when I'm alone, said Caron. And can you sleep with me tonight? Allan folded his arms and said, Aren't you with Gregory now? I sleep with him, but we do not fuck, if that's what you're asking. And he keeps feigning illness, and if he's attracted to me, then why doesn't he sleep with me? Asked Caron. Did you sleep with him the first time he offered himself to you? Asked Allan. No, said Caron shyly. Big mistake. And once you throw water into the fires of Gregory's patches, it can take a while before they light up again. And you miss your window of opportunity, little ogre, said Allan, laughing. But he was tired, protested Caron. If he was, he would have not bothered to ask you to feast on his flesh. And when he gets all warm and fuzzy like that, it means that he wants you to make love to him slow and gently, explained Allan. Maybe this was all a huge mistake, said Caron, frowning. Don't say that, barked Allan. Just give Gregory a chance. He's nice and he's sweet. He knows how to cook. He can paint. He's also lots of fun. He can teach you magic and sword fighting. He's a great dad and an awesome loyal friend. And in the bed, he's perfect. He's both handsome and beautiful. How can you not like Gregory? Why don't you like Gregory? Why don't you love him? Asked Caron. Because he doesn't love me. He loves me as a friend, and he loves after me, but that is as far as things go, explained Allan. I did fancy once that I loved Gregory, but the love died quickly. Back in the tower, we would roleplay from time to time, and then one night here comes Gregory with one of my father's Arch Magus robes and a black wig. And that was the first time I broke up with him, and that is why it has to be you, Caron. When he looks at you, he sees you. And promise me that you are going to give Gregory a fair shot. I promise you I will give Gregory a fair chance, said Caron solemnly. Ya tiene, ya te lo voy a